Welcome back to another episode of Not Financial Advice. My name is Sean. Today is Wednesday, February 14th. And on today's video, we're going to be talking about stealing stocks. And so, what I mean by that is if you are a new investor or a more experienced one, there have probably been times when you have seen others' investments do well, or fund managers who are particularly hot, and you've wanted to, get the same returns as them. And, it's pretty common that one will steal or copy or clone a stock idea or an investment philosophy from another investor. But in today's video, we're going to talk about ways to do that in a more thoughtful process. And I'm also going to show you pretty much each and every example of stock ideas, investment concepts that I've lifted or borrowed from others. And we're going to get into that right after this.
You need to diversify your bonds.
The only problem you're going to have is that you didn't buy more. Because by the time you read about it in the Wall Street Journal, it's already too late.
So let's get into this idea or this concept of copying or cloning stocks. I think it's said pretty well by a guy named Monish Pabrai, who is a friend of the late Charlie Munger. So we're going to watch a quick clip on him talking about this concept of cloning other people's business or stock ideas. Before we do that, I'll ask you to like the video or subscribe to the channel. And also, I want to hear from you. If there are any stocks that you stole from a friend or something that you overheard and it's turned out either really well or really poorly for you, I'd love to hear about your story. Just leave that in the comment section below, and I'll look forward to reading that and replying to each one. All right, so first let's do a little check-in on how the portfolio is doing today. Today I'm up $500, which is 0.72%. I'm doing a little bit worse in the stock market. The S&P 500 is up 0.77%. Tech stocks are outperforming, and so are small caps in the Russell 2000 index, as you can see there. For full disclosure, yesterday was a pretty bloody day in the stock market for me and for most other people. So the market went down about 1.5% yesterday. I was down 1.8, which was $1,300 in unrealized losses. And so, there's been quite a swing. Yesterday was pretty bloody red, but today's looking okay. And so let's go over my top 5 best performing stocks today, as well as the bottom 5 decliners. So what we can see is that my top performing stock today is Coinbase, up 14%. Netflix is up 4.4%. Facebook is up 2.9%. Salesforce is up 2.8%. And aerospace and defense sector ETF is up 2.7%. Now, looking at the stocks that have performed most poorly today, what we can see is that my 5th worst performing investment is, in fact, Pepsi, down 0.84%. I'm also going to include Target down 0.82% as well, as this is a mutual fund and updates later. I'll actually have more gains once this updates. But down again is also Trulieve, Curaleaf, and Kraft Heinz, which had a pretty negative quarterly report today, missing on one of the metrics. But let's take a look over here and see what Monish Pabrai has to say on the topic.
He gave a story. And I really found this story really hard to believe. I said, this cannot be the way the world works. So what Tom said is that, and he said this was a true story. He said that there were these 2 gas stations at this busy intersection in California. And they were both self-serve gas stations. And at that time, for those of you who are older than the time when you just put your credit card in and out of the machine, you had to actually go into the store to pay, if you remember that. One of the owners of the gas station would come out every hour and a half, pick a random car, and tell the guy, listen, sit in the car, I'll give you a full serve. So you pump the gas, clean the windshield, check the oil, just do everything, and at no charge, right? And the guy across the street could clearly see what is going on. And his perspective was that this is stupid. It's self-serve. Why do you want to give full serve on self-serve? Because you're never going to make the money on that. And you can't do it for everyone. What's the point of doing this for this random people? Because the other people are not getting serviced. Over time, what started happening is the guy who was providing the extra service once in a while was getting more business. More cars were going to his gas station, which is the guy across the street. And even after the guy across the street saw a drop in business, and it was clearly visible to him why his business has dropped, he did not make a change to his modus operandi. And
Right. And so what Monish Pabrai went on to say is that when he started his IT business in the 90s, he pledged to clone ideas from his competitors. And that's something that worked out very well for him in his, not only in his business life, but also later in his investing life. And so let's get back over here and take a look at the portfolio. I'm just going to sort of get into the first stock that I stole from someone and just sort of give some anecdotes on that. But we'll see how some of my investments have done over all time. So when we're talking about these stocks, we have a concept of how I've been doing in them so far. So let's go ahead and look for the first one I want to talk to you about, which is Coinbase here. Okay, so Coinbase, I stole this stock from Cathie Wood. When I first started getting invested in early 2021, her fund was doing really well. It went on to do really well before doing really, really poorly and giving back all of her gains. And so I was looking at the ARK ETF, and I heard people saying positive things. I heard people saying negative things. So I said, let me go in here and just look at some of the individual holdings and see which ones that I like that make sense to me through my lens, through my perspective. And so my lens or perspective is companies that were actually profitable, companies that had some free cash flow, which Coinbase actually does. And so I also have a concept, that I was taught or that I learned that when people are mining for gold, sell picks and shovels. And so, there was a lot of FOMO around ARK. There was a lot of FOMO around Bitcoin, and it didn't fit within my philosophy, but I knew that I could gain some exposure to it by stealing the stock idea from Cathie Wood, Coinbase. So I own about 11 shares of it. I'm up 102% on it, which is good for $855 in gains. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So I just wanted to sort of really quickly just, paint that picture to you of the way in which you can steal stocks from other people. And I think the main takeaway from the video is, if you see or hear of what seems like a good stock idea, the main thing I would emphasize to you is if you see a stock or a fund manager whose shares are going up in price and you want to look into one of their investments, just make sure that once you do that, you're doing it through your lens, through whatever your criteria are. You're not buying something just because it goes up. You can get an idea because a stock or a fund goes up, but make sure that if you're going to buy it, that not only does it fit within your framework, but it's a company you understand and you can believe in. And so we've got a handful of other stocks that I've stolen successfully or unsuccessfully to different orders of magnitude. But I wanted to hear another word from a smart investor named Peter Lynch. So we're going to go over to that, and then we're going to go through the rest of my stolen stocks here. I'll ask you to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's see what Peter Lynch has to say.
10 or 15 times my money in Dunkin' Donuts. Those are the kind of stocks I can understand. If you don't understand it, it doesn't work. This is the single biggest principle. And it bothers me that people are very careful with their money. The public, when they buy a refrigerator, they get a Consumer Reports, they buy a microwave oven, they do that. They ask people what's the best kind of radar range, or what kind of car to buy. They do research on apartments. When they go on a trip to Wyoming, they get the mobile travel guide, or California. When they go to Europe, they get the Michelin travel guide. People will hear a tip on a bus on some stock, and they'll put half their life savings in it before sunset, and they wonder why they lose money in the stock market. And when they lose money, they blame it on the institutions and program trading. That is garbage. They didn't do any research. They bought a piece of junk. They didn't look at the balance sheet, and that's what you get for it. And that's what we were being driven to, and it's self-fulfilling. The public does.
Yeah, so basically what he said is that, people will do research on a fridge for weeks and weeks, but they'll just hear about a hot stock on a bus and put half their life savings into it. So that's the opposite of what we're trying to do here. And so let's talk about some of these other ideas that were, stolen or cloned or copied. I guess a shout out here, just one that I can see. Winnebago is one that I stole from a great finance content creator here on YouTube called Wall Street Trapper. And so this is one that he had bought and sold, but I continue to hold. Interestingly, a lot of the stock ideas I steal off YouTube are not my best performers. So not financial advice. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. But when I saw his investment here, it was during a particular time when things were different. A lot of people were, wanting to get out of big cities and go into rural areas. This is in 2021. But what I went on to find is that this was a company that was a little bit smaller in size, so more of a mid cap company. It was a company that had some pretty strong growth numbers, but it was also a company that was, at the time, had been originated and was based in Iowa, where I'm from. And I just know a little bit about the quality and character of Iowa workers and Iowa managers. And additionally, I knew people in my life where, in the summertime, all they did is take their family out in an RV. That was what the 21st century American dream looked like for a lot of Iowans that I knew. And so I bought the stock. I'm happy to still own it. It's performed relatively terrible for the 3 years that I've held it, but there's a lot of great characteristics on its balance sheet, which we also have to look at, that are going to keep me in that position. So let's see what else here I stole from people. So here's a great one. Coca-Cola FEMSA. So this is Mexican Coke in a glass bottle. I talk about it a lot. I own about 15 shares of it. I'm up 58% on it, which is $530. A stolen stock, stolen from Bill Gates. Bill Gates, who stole his investment philosophy from Warren Buffett. And so what I knew about this was when I went to local authentic taqueritas, they had Mexican Coke in a glass bottle, pure cane sugar, not corn syrup. Um, it tastes better. And when I looked at the stock and its balance sheet and had significant free cash flow, and it was trading for a forward PE that was the same as when Warren Buffett bought into Coca-Cola proper. Probably many of the reasons Bill Gates bought it, and also the reason I double stole it. So just another great example of how stealing stocks can be a profitable pursuit endeavor if you do it in the right ways. So what else have I stolen from people? Let's see here. Intel. I stole this from my aunt and uncle who've been investing since the 80s. They talked about the quality of the new CEO, Pat Gesslinger. I agreed. Um, I saw the CHIPS Act. I saw the risk to chips from Asia. I bought it. I was down on it for a long time. They cut their dividend. I bought it. I continued to buy it. I'm up modestly 15%, $150. I've got 26 shares of it. It's a relatively large holding for me. So what else have I stolen from people? Okay, so this is one. I stole this stock idea from my best friend, who's a prior service Marine and farmer. And so, he's always has his ear to the ground about stuff that's going on in Europe or in Asia, and is very concerned about the future for our country. He's talking about the inevitability of a conflict happening, this, that, and the other. And the thought always is this priced in? But when I looked at it, I saw that this whole sector has not moved like in the last 10 years. These companies have higher and higher earnings, but the sector has done relatively poorly over the last 10 years. And that can be a sign that it might be a bit of a coiled spring. So I stole that idea. I made $130 for it. And that answers that one. Now here's not everything is as awesome as that though. So another one of my best friends uh, worked at Trulieve, which is the number one provider of medical cannabis in Florida. And so what I learned is that the CEO was a pretty shrewd woman. She is a great business leader. She runs a much tighter ship than every other cannabis company in the United States, and essentially has a monopoly on the state of Florida in medical, which has a growing and aging population, and ultimately, I believe, will become a recreational state. And so this is one that's a high conviction bet for me, but hasn't been as great. I've been down as much as 85% on it. I'm down $1,200. I own 100 shares. I'm holding it because I see big things for it in the next 5, 10, 15 years. Time will tell. So more stocks that I stole. This one was stolen from Cathie Wood as well, Vertex Pharmaceuticals. So be careful with pharmaceutical or biotech stocks. It's all about their pipeline and how long their patents last. But Vertex makes a particular drug that's very helpful for people. Um, and I can't even remember what the ailment is, but it's a serious ailment, and they're one of the only companies that can solve that. And so I bought it. I'm up 57% on it. I've made $300 on it. And I also see that they have a new drug, opiate-less painkiller, which is doing quite well. And so I own it. And I just looked at this as a way to just send a balloon up with some of my money on it and let it grow higher. And so let's see what else there is. Obviously, I bought Berkshire because reasons. Here's another fun one: weed and precious metal. So a good friend of mine, um, it has sort of a gambler's mentality. He's got a large family and a lot of responsibilities, so he's bought and sold stocks at different times, and he's told me about how he had bought XYZ stock at $10 and now it's $30, and I listened, and some people think that it would make sense to hold gold, but I understand that picks and shovels are better. So I wanted to see if I could own a company that had exposure to gold but could pay me dividends, a company that produced um, assets, essentially produce value, tangible, monetized value. And so when I heard him drop this name, I looked into it and I found it out. This is pretty much the number one miner of gold and silver in the world, based on their comparison to other companies in that space. So I made a cool 44 bucks off of it. Just another balloon sending my money up. And so, Texas Roadhouse, I stole this idea from Joseph Carlson, uh, made $124 on it. They have a Texas Roadhouse in my community. Parking lot's always full. Pretty much that straightforward. Tesla, I stole from Cathie Wood as well. Hasn't done as well. I bought it as a diversifier because it moves in a different direction than the S&P 500. Not super worried about it one way or the other. And, so on and so forth. I don't need to get into all of these to basically, paint this picture that I've painted for you, and I think that you get it. So, this has been my video on stealing stocks. I hope that it was informative for you. I really enjoyed making this video. If you enjoyed watching it, make sure to hit like and subscribe on the way out. If you have any ideas for any videos you'd like to see me produce, any stocks you'd like for me to review, or any war stories of stocks that you've stolen, good, bad, or indifferent, just leave that note for me in the comment section below. But as always, I'm Sean. This is not financial advice, and I'll see you on the next one.